just wait for Melo.
Greetings, everyone. We'll just wait a couple more seconds as people enter this space, and then we'll begin. If you're just joining us, we're just waiting a couple more seconds as people enter the room before we begin. Very good. I think we'll get started and see as others join the space. But welcome everyone from wherever you're joining. Good afternoon, good morning. We are very glad to have you. And we'd like to welcome everyone to this third edition of the Research Report Spotlight series, hosted by the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment, hosted at Wits University, Wits Business School here in Johannesburg, South Africa. My name is Tyler Dahlhauger. I am a senior advisor at the Caribou Foundation in Oslo, Norway, and I am a visiting researcher at CAPSI for the next couple of months. I'm very pleased to be your moderator today and very excited about this session. A few housekeeping things before we jump in and explain what the session is today. This session is being recorded, and so you can watch it again afterwards on various channels and various platforms of CAPSI. Additionally, we're having people join from many different regions, many different parts of Africa and beyond. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Tell us where you're coming from, what your name is, and what you're excited about to be here. And we also have a question and answer Q&A chat box. So please feel free throughout the session today to write in your questions that we can ask the panelists and the researchers, and we can also take them in the end. We'll have a chance for a good discussion. But we're very happy that you're here. If you are non-English speaker, as the session will be in English today, there is also a closed caption box at the bottom of your screen where you can click that and also have access to texting from different languages. So we hope this can be a little more inclusive in terms of languages. The Research Report Spotlight series is a platform for researchers and the broader academic community who are writing about new narratives of African philanthropy and social investment. It's a space to unpack the findings about new narratives of African philanthropy, and it's a space to interact with the community of practitioners and academics who are engaged in these topics. CAPSI's research reports offer a glimpse into the various expressions of philanthropic forms, types, and practices from across the continent. And over the past few years, CAPSI has worked with researchers and partners across Africa to begin writing a new narrative on African philanthropy and social investment. There's studies on high net worth individuals, social investment, and philanthropic foundations, as well as philanthropic activity in a number of selected countries. And CAPSI hopes this is just the beginning of a long anticipated journey in looking and interpreting the philanthropic landscape here in Africa. Today, we'll be getting the chance to hear from two very exciting researchers who've been looking specifically at these issues from two very distinct parts of the African continent. And I'm very happy today that we have both Arsène, Brice, Bado, and Melody Mandevere, who will be presenting their research for us today. We'll start by allowing both of the researchers to present their work and talk about their efforts. And then after both of them have had the chance to present, we'll have a good dialogue and invite all of your questions into it. So again, please feel free to write your questions in the chats, your observations in the chats, and we should be able to take it all. So again, please feel welcome and please feel free to be engaged in this space. So again, as I said, we have two exciting researchers who have been looking at questions of philanthropy across the continent who have joined us today. Arsène, Brice, Bado, and Melody Mandevere. And we'll start with Arsène, who will talk about his research first. So please let me introduce Arsène Bado. He is the Vice President for Academic Affairs and International Relations at CEREP in Côte d'Ivoire. Before working at CEREP, he was on the Southern Voices Network. He was the Southern Voices Network Scholar at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C., and he was also a visiting researcher at Yale University. His background is in, among other things, philosophy, social anthropology, theology, social ethics, international human rights law, and he has his PhD in political science from Laval University in Canada. He is also an associate researcher at CAPSI. So we're very pleased to welcome Arsène. He will be presenting his research on mapping African philanthropic landscape, a review of high net worth individuals in 3 French-speaking countries, specifically Mali, Gabon, and Côte d'Ivoire. So Arsène, please, the floor is yours.
May I share my screen? Oh. Partage it up. Could you allow me to share my screen?
We'll ask the technical team to support that.
Sorry. Up. Or maybe should I speak, or could you send the video?
And we'll check with the technical team if they can please support in
Okay.
sharing the screen.
Good. Maybe.
So
Are you able to share now, Arsène?
Okay. So let me try. Oh. That's it.
It's enabled, Arsène. You should be able to do that.
Oh, so why is not
Do you see the green button in the middle, just between participants and reactions? There's an arrow pointing up.
iPhone up. No, the green. Yes. Up.
Oh, there you go. Okay, Claire is sharing.
Ah.
very good. Go ahead, Arsène.
Good.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm sorry for this technical, problem. So as already said, my presentation is on mapping the African philanthropic landscape, and I'll be presenting research that have been done with high net worth individuals in 3 Francophone countries, Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon, and Mali. Let me move this. Okay, could you see me? Could you see the screen?
Yes, so we can.
Okay, could you move? I can move it.
I think you'll
Go to the.
I think you'll need to go on the next slide in the PowerPoint.
Yes, this is and when I do that, nothing move. Up.
Hi, Arsène. I'm sharing from my side, so you can instruct me.
Oh,
when
that's
to
why.
move.
That's why I can't move it. So please, could you go to the next slide? Yeah, please, could you move down? Oh. Sorry, could you move it? Anyway, so I will start talking, and then I hope that the technical thing will be resolved. So philanthropy is in Francophone countries something which is really generalized. So there are a lot of activities of philanthropy in these countries. However, the expression of philanthropy vary considerably, and its form also can differ from one society to another. For example, in Côte d'Ivoire, in southern Côte d'Ivoire and northern Côte d'Ivoire, people don't do the same with regard to philanthropic actions. I will come in detail. As a phenomenon of society, the mode of expression and organization of philanthropy are profoundly marked by the culture of the societies in which they unfold. So we will try to capture that. This study or this report aimed to uncover the current state of philanthropy performed by wealthy people in French-speaking countries, namely in Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Mali. This is what I will try to present. I'm sorry that the PowerPoint is not moving.
And we sent a message to the technical team, so we're hoping they can
okay, so I will continue speaking. So the main research question that I tried to address was really simple. What is the current state of philanthropy interventions of high net worth individuals in Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon, and Mali, that are 3 French-speaking countries? In fact, there are very little have been written on philanthropy in Francophone countries. And especially for these 3 countries, we just want to know what exists, what do we know about philanthropy in these 3 countries. This is what I tried to do. So this is a mapping paper. And then I also tried to respond to some subsequent questions that who are these African philanthropists, in these countries? How much money do these people have, and how much do they invest in philanthropy? What are their sources of money? What are their decision-making process? What are their giving strategies? And what are the trends, the interest in areas in which they invest? And finally, what are the influences of their philanthropic impact? These are things that I will try to discuss quickly. So in terms of methodology, this report is based on a literature review on high net worth individuals in general, and more specifically on their philanthropic action in the select 3 countries. Also, I did a qualitative research with interviews. Basically, I try to have 75 interviews in each of the 3 countries, so that, yes, I have a total of 225 people that were interviewed. So what are the findings? Is it possible? Yes, could you move, please? Could you go to the next slide? So what are the findings? So first, who are the high net worth individuals? So a first overview of the philanthropy landscape in these 3 countries revealed that the predominance of philanthropies coming from key sectors, such as corporate business, like food industry, real estate business, mobile phone companies, and also finance and bank, then politicians and government officials, and sport, especially from football, and also from the entertainment sector, actors in the arts, music, and the movies. So these are the sectors where we have high net worth individuals that are involved in philanthropy in these 3 countries. So please, could you show the graph that is, could you move to the next? Please. So I want to show a graph, but obviously you don't see that. In each of the country, I try to see who are the high net worth individuals that are involved in philanthropy. So the graph, okay, yes, thank you. I think that you went to the, could you show the first graph, please? The first one should be Côte d'Ivoire. Okay, good, thank you. So we have, as we see, in Côte d'Ivoire, most of the high net worth individuals that are involved in philanthropy come from the corporate business finance sector. So they represent almost 68%, and follow the politicians. Yes, politicians are among the people that are making donations, that are more involved in philanthropy. We should discuss if this is really philanthropy or this is politics. But anyway, this is how people see that. And then we have people involved in sport, generally people in football, and then the entertainment sector. And for Gabon, please, yes, for Gabon, you have we have almost the same pattern. We have 40% of the high net worth individual, that are involved in philanthropy come from the corporate business and finance sector. And also we have politicians, 20% come from the people who are involved in politics. As you see in Gabon, those who are involved in politics are really more important than compared to Côte d'Ivoire. And then you have 20% who come from sport and entertainment area. For Mali, you have almost the same thing, but not exactly the same thing. This is very interesting. In Mali, the entertainment sector, that is musicians, especially musicians and other artists, yes, are among the philanthropists. I mean, the big number of philanthropists come from this area, not from the corporate business and finance sector, like in the other countries. So this is very interesting in Mali. Also, they come also from the political sector and from sport. So could we move? Okay, good. So now I just want to discuss the source of the wealth that fund high net worth individual philanthropic action. Where do they get the money to support their philanthropic action? When we put together all the three countries, it appeared that the first source is obviously what they own, what these people, high net worth individual own. So this is their own fortune that they use first to do to support their philanthropic action. And the second recurring funding source among philanthropists is the use of fundraising activities, such as the organization of gala dinners or charitable ceremonies in order to raise funds. This is now also common to raise funds for philanthropic action. And the third source of funding concerns donations received through foundations. In general, it is not rare that high net worth individuals work through foundation that they have set to serve the cause they supported. So they may use their own fortune, or they can create also foundations that are able to receive donations. So that are the three sources of wealth to support philanthropic action in these three countries. And now, what are the instruments used to perform philanthropy? How do they do philanthropy? What are the instruments? As we see on this graph, for Côte d'Ivoire, most of the people use foundations. Those who are rich, they created foundations that usually bear their name, and they help people through their foundation. Also, they help people through NGOs. There are some NGOs that they support to do to perform some of the work. They also usually name or use what we call ambassador of causes, for example, to spend their money to help people. And yeah, these are the three main instruments that they use for philanthropic action. As for Gabon, yes, it's still foundations. Foundations are really the main instrument that those who are rich are using to support people. Also NGOs for ambassador of causes. This is almost the same thing in Mali. So foundation, through NGOs. And in Mali, it is very important to know that there are other ways that those who have money try to help people. You know, we recorded here a diversity of instruments. They can use several traditional instruments that are so diverse that I put them here. So quickly, what are the areas of intervention of high net worth individual philanthropic actions? So as for Côte d'Ivoire, you could see that most of the people, philanthropists, they focus on education. The main area are education first, and then children protection and health issues. That are really the three main areas where people put their money. And also do have other areas where they also help. This is fight against racism, solidarity, sport, art and culture, and so on. For Gabon, the main sector there are two main sectors. This is education and health. So most of the philanthropists are very much interested in investing in education and health, and then follow youth employment, and then children protection and women empowerment. So these are the area of intervention in Ghana, in Gabon. In Mali, we have, as you see, health become the first sector. I mean, where the priority sector where most of the philanthropists put their money, and then follows education, and then we have youth employment and other sub-field. So this gives you the areas or the domains where people who are rich and that perform philanthropy used to put their money. Now, I just want quickly to share some of the issues, the lack of institutionalization of philanthropy. When you ask the people, do you have a method for evaluating the effectiveness, efficiency, and impact of your donation, your philanthropic activities? Most of the people will say no, they don't have any way to assess the impact of their of the philanthropic activities. So they even don't care. And this is really a problem. Normally, when you give money to somebody you want to know, you expect to receive reports that will help you to assess, to know that if the money was really well used. But in most of this country, most of the foundation, they don't ask that, you know, they don't really care about the impact. What is important for them is to give. Yes. So when you ask people, how do you give? They will say, as you see, I don't know if you see my presentation, but you will see that 72% they will say that, people use only 12% use, give for the company social responsibility unit, and 60% use, personal foundation, and most of 72% will say that they are using other means. You know, they don't use foundation or the corporate unit related to social responsibility. Yes, so they give for other means. It means that they just give out of the pocket. You know, it is not really institutionalized. People don't apply, for example, to get the money. You know, they can decide just to give it to you like that. So when you ask people, how often do you donate? You could see that, I don't know if you see the graph, the next graph, how often, yes, do you donate? As you could see, that mostly people don't have a timeline or really something which is really scheduled to donate. Some people will say that only eight people will say that weekly, on a weekly basis. 26 people will say that during specific calendar period like Christmas, Ramadan, etc. And other people will say that annually. Yes, 32% will say that monthly, that they give monthly. And when you try to assess the way that they're giving, there is no specific calendar. For example, something is really structured, where people will know that where people could apply for money. So the next slide. If you try to ask people what is the geographic coverage of your philanthropic activities, you could see that most of the people are focusing on the city where they live or the region. It is really people that are close to them or area that are close to them. And this is mostly explained by two things, because it is not institutionalized, or also people focus on the on relations. It means that to get the money, you have to know somebody who knows him, who are closer to him in order to get it. So if we live further, you may not have the opportunity to meet with him in person. So this may explain this situation. And so we do have even those who have created instruments like foundations, you know, they are not able to give to region or cities or community that are really living a little bit far away from where they stay. Let us move to the next and to the final. Yes, please, could you move? Yes, so I have to conclude now because they told me that I have to speak only 15 minutes, so I hope to have questions. So there are 4 things that we can take from this quick presentation. So this is the informality of philanthropy. So it is really weak institutionalized. Those high net worth individuals, really, even those who have created some instrument, they really, it is not really very much institutionalized. As I say, even the foundation don't care about impact evaluation of their donation. You know, they donate almost on an informal basis. So second, there is the secrecy of donation. It's very difficult to have accurate data, you know, because, you know, people are just donating in a kind of informal way. You know, if you are giving in an informal way, it is very difficult to have accurate data on where your money goes, on what kind of philanthropic action and the real level of funding that you put in supporting, you know, because that's the problem. And also the secrecy of donation, this is also cultural. When you give, people don't want to know that you gave them, you know, except politicians. Yeah, they want it. But the other people, they don't want, you know, sometimes for religious reason or for cultural reason. When you give something to somebody and go somewhere and telling that, oh, I gave something to this man or to this, culturally here, it is not well perceived, you know. And that's why people don't want to say that they received something. So this is, except for very huge donations, yeah, that, yes, they will make some publicity on that. And finally, third, the emergence of the politicians as the main figures of philanthropy. In these 3 countries, politicians are really the richest people. Unfortunately, it is not the business people. This is really the politicians. And yes, they are donating money to NGOs, to everyone, even when it is not even outside the electoral period. You know, it becomes a kind of habit. That's why the action can be also considered as philanthropic action, because they have been doing that, helping a lot of people by their own money, you know, sometimes really outside the political calendar. And finally, most philanthropic action focus on poverty alleviation or health and education issues, you know, mostly on things that are charity, you know, but not on social change, not on justice issues, you know, not on issues that can really transform the society. They focuses on the consequences like poverty, like health, like education. We really need a kind of philanthropy that will really help change the society, change the rules, so that we will not have to have a lot of poor, a lot of people who need help. So this type of philanthropy is really is really missing. So I will stop here and wait for your question. I'm sorry for the technical issues and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arsène. This was really interesting, and I understand this is one of the first of its kind research mapping this out. So it's exciting to hear what you found and exciting to see. And again, sorry for the technical challenges with the PowerPoint. I hope, Arsène, maybe we can get your permission to put the slides up on the internet so that they can be accessible afterwards if people are trying to get it, if that's all right.
Sure.
Fantastic. I have one technical question for you that came in the chat, and then we'll get a chance to ask more questions afterwards. But there was a question in the chat of, within the research, what is the net worth of the assets in order for someone to be considered high net worth individual? Where was the line that you used to say, this is the group that I'm looking at?
Oh, excellent. Yes, this is one of the charts that I did not present. This is $1 million. This is what, yes, we use. If somebody has $1 million, so we consider is among the high net worth individuals. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. That's a good clarification and helps frame the research even better. And we'll come back to you, Arsène, with some questions as we move forward, if that's all right. It'll be a good conversation. Excellent. Well, then we get the chance to move to our next researcher. Next, I'm very pleased to introduce to you Melody Mandevere. Melody is a postdoc research fellow here at CAPC in Johannesburg. She is passionate about the African continent, looking within Africa to solve African problems. And she holds a PhD from WITS here in Johannesburg. Her background is also in business management, in labor relations and computer sciences. And not least, she has an interest in corporate social responsibility, social investment, social entrepreneurship, and philanthropy. And Melody will now be presenting her research on understanding the operations of philanthropic organizations in Africa, case of 3 selected countries, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So please, Melody, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tyler. Good afternoon, colleagues. Unfortunately, I can't start my video because apparently the host has stopped it. So I'll present without the video. As you have heard, my name is Melody Mandevere, and I'm going to present on understanding the operations of philanthropic organizations in Africa. So this is just part of a larger project that was commissioned by CAPC on understanding the operations of philanthropic organizations in Africa. In this particular presentation I'm doing today is on South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And to manage our time, I'll focus on the findings. I won't talk about the literature review. So as I said before, the purpose of this research was to understand who and how are the operations of philanthropic organizations in Africa, focusing on South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And the particular objectives were to understand the type of philanthropic organizations in each country, understanding how those philanthropic organizations are registering in their particular countries, understand how the finances of those philanthropic organizations are, and the patterns of them giving out the finances. So on the methodology, this was a quantitative analysis with purposive sampling, targeting local philanthropic organizations. We used SurveyMonkey to distribute the questionnaires. We distributed the questionnaires to more than 200 organizations, and a total of 78 organizations responded, 17 from South Africa, 30 from Zambia, and 31 from Zimbabwe. On the type of philanthropic organizations, maybe it's important for me to explain a little bit about the type of philanthropic organizations. When we're talking about independent foundations, it's either a family or an operating foundation. And on corporate foundations, these are foundations that are set up and run by a company. And the source of funding for corporate foundations is the organization and its employees. On community foundations, this is a public charity that typically focuses on supporting a particular geographical area, primarily by facilitating and pooling donations to address community needs. And a trust is structured transfer of assets to a small group of people or to a trust company with orders that they retain the assets for the good of others. So as we can see here, for South Africa, from the 17 that responded, we see that 10 were independent foundations, 3 were corporate foundations, no community foundations responded from South Africa, 3 were charitable trusts, no church foundations responded, and 1 said they didn't fall in any of these and they were under other. And for Zimbabwe, we had 14 community foundations, 7 charitable trusts, 2 church organizations, and 8 who classified themselves as other. And for Zambia, we had 21 community foundations, 5 charitable trusts, no church organizations, and no other. On the registration of philanthropic organizations, when were they registered? We wanted to know when we could say the period where philanthropic organizations sort of strengthened. So for South Africa, we can see that the majority, that's 9 out of 17, they registered after 2010, 3 between 2000 and 2009, 2 between 1990, the same goes for 1980 to 1989, and only 1 before 1979. And this trend that's being shown in South Africa is in support of other scholars. For example, UMA 2020 say that there seems to be an increase in the number of corporates involved in philanthropic work, as the number of corporates involved in donations grew 10 times between 2008 and 2018. Also, Knight Frank's Wealth Report of 22 reported that the number of high net worth individuals increased by 14% between 2020 and 2021. And for Zimbabwe, the trend is almost the same as in South Africa, where the majority were registered after 2010, 7 between 2000 and 2009. And from the organizations which responded to our research, none registered prior to 1989. And also this trend in Zimbabwe is in agreement with the USA 2010 NGO Sustainability Report, where they indicated that the operating environment for civil society organizations improved in many countries in 2010. It is also important to note that there was a government of national unity that was formed in Zimbabwe in 2009, and this may have caused an increase in the operating environment for civil society organizations in Zimbabwe, according to some scholars. For Zambia, the trend is a little bit different, as we can see that the majority of philanthropic organizations were registered between 2000 and 2009, that's 15. 10 were registered after 2010, and between 1990 and 1999, 5, and no organization registered before 1979. The trend on Zambia, it may be because of the NGO Act, which was enacted in Zambia in 2009, which was said to be limiting the civic space, according to some scholars. So it's said that the registration of the organizations also became very cumbersome following the enactment of the law in 2009. I'll go to the registration process. How long is the registration process in the different countries? So in Zimbabwe, on average, it takes 0 to 4 months for an organization to undergo the registration process. Where it takes more, it is explained by other reasons out of the normal registration framework. The same goes for Zambia, where it also takes 0 to 4 months to go the registration process. And where it takes more, it is also attributed to logistical challenges like document missing and other reasons. We also found out that among these 3 countries, it's much easier. The process is much easier. It is done online. So I think I jumped another slide here. So on asset values, the asset values, the reason why we wanted to know the asset values is because we wanted to know how big is the organization. The asset value determines how big the organization is. So in Zimbabwe, 10 organizations reported that they only have assets between 1,000 and 10,000, and only 7 above 50,000. If we go to Zambia, 16, the majority, in fact, the trend is that the majority have very little assets. That's between 1,000 and 10,000. These are US dollars. And also, it's important to note that 8 organizations have assets that are above 50,000. However, it is important for us to note that the majority are very small, as determined by the value of their assets. Almost the same trend is for South Africa again, where 7, which is almost 7, said they have assets between 1,000 and 10,000, and 6 have assets above 50,000. Still on organizational finances, here we are trying to look at the revenue generation, the amount of revenue that they generate, and the other diagram is showing us the sources where they are generating the revenue from. So you notice that some of the organizations were not comfortable in responding to this question. So this report is only focusing on those who responded. And for those who responded, only 9 organizations said they generate revenue that's about that's under 100,000, and 5 between 100,000 and 300,000, and only 2 above 1 million. Yeah. And if we look at sources of raising funds, the sources of revenue generation, it is important for us to note that in Zimbabwe, 24% of the organizations are raising their revenue from grants, followed by 22% from sponsorship or donations, the least being 2%, which is being raised from the government. On the revenue generation, if we compare Zambia and Zimbabwe, we see that we almost have the same trend, just that in Zambia, we have a little bit more organizations, which we have a revenue between 500,000 and 1 million. However, we have a completely different trend on how the revenue is generated. For Zambia, only 1% is being received from sponsorship or donations, and they are having their highest revenue generation, that's 27% from grants, followed by member contribution, which is 23%. And the others, fundraising and income generation, they quite have a significant number, that's 20%. On revenue, the amount of revenue generated, the same trend seems to be the same across all the 3 countries, where we note that the revenue being generated are below 100,000. Many organizations are under that category. And as we go, the number of organizations is becoming low and low. However, it is important to note that South Africa also has a different trend on sources of raising funds. The highest being sponsorship and donation, almost like Zimbabwe, 39%, fundraising, 35%, grants, 13%, income generation, 9%, which is quite significant, and other, that's 4%. And then we go to the patterns of giving out. On the organizations which responded in Zimbabwe, it is important for us to note that 19 organizations, it's important for us also to point out that some organizations are focusing on more than one activity. That's why you see that the numbers here are quite high. So the highest here being environment and conservation with 19, followed by education, followed by rural development. Gender promotion is quite high too, with 12. Knowledge generation, quite a significant number, and some just share a little bit of the funds that are being raised. For Zambia, the highest category getting the most of the funds is child promotion, where 24 organizations indicated that they are focusing on that. That's followed by gender promotion, followed by health, with 21 organizations, followed by environment and conservation, rural development, education, and others. Let's go to South Africa. South Africa, their highest number is on education, where 9 organizations indicated that they are responding to that, followed by gender promotion, followed by child promotion, followed by rural development, and others also share insignificant numbers. It is important for us to note that across all 3 countries, organizations are sort of focusing on vulnerable groups. That's the children, the women, and the old. It's important to note that across 3 countries, organizations, we have many organizations focusing on that. And then on the patterns of giving out, that's on beneficiaries. We have the youth from Zimbabwe, they're taking 28%, women, 21%, children, 18%, and the others taking, I'm sorry, I'm a bit rushing because of our time. Environment activities taking about 7%. If you go to beneficiaries in Zambia, it is important that women are taking 22%, youth 20%, children 14%. As I mentioned, that the vulnerable are taking quite a significant. Many organizations are sort of focusing on the vulnerable groups. The same goes for South Africa, where 28% women, youth 24%, children 16%, and other 28%. Conclusions. From our research, we concluded that community foundations are more prevalent in Zambia and Zimbabwe, while independent foundations and corporate foundations are the most dominant forms of philanthropic organizations in South Africa. The other one is that the majority of foundations in the 3 countries are still very small, as more than 50% of them have assets that are valued below $10,000 US. The majority of philanthropic organizations in the 3 countries generate revenue which is below 10,000. The majority of organizations in South Africa is an actual expenditure that falls between $500,000 and $1 million. Unlike in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, I'm sorry, that's a tape error there, it's Zimbabwe and Zambia, where the majority has an expenditure that is below 200,000. Philanthropic organizations in Zambia raise most of their funds from within the country, from grants, member contribution, fundraising, and income generation, unlike in Zimbabwe, where they rely mostly on external funding. And then on recommendations, we recommend that corporates in Zimbabwe and Zambia should be encouraged to register foundations as a way of giving back to the community. You will notice that yes, corporates are doing something through CSR, but it is very difficult to trace and record philanthropic work that's being done through corporate social responsibility, unlike if a corporate registers a foundation like in South Africa. We also recommend that it is important to encourage philanthropic organizations' growth, as their size will determine the size of philanthropic work they will be able to cover. It is also important for philanthropic organizations to find ways of generating large amounts of revenue to enable growth in the sector, especially in Zimbabwe and South Africa, where they should be trained more on revenue generation, especially considering how low their expenditure is. Philanthropic organizations in Zimbabwe should focus on generating their revenue from inside rather than focusing on external funding. I think that's the end of my presentation. I thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Melody, for presenting that. It was really interesting to hear both some similarities and some differences coming from some of the Francophone countries compared to some of the Anglophone countries where there's overlap, maybe not so much overlap and all those things. We'll move into a section now. Melody, if you can stop sharing your screen. Thank you. We'll move into a section now where we should hopefully have about 20 minutes for a good conversation between the two of you, and also a conversation bringing in some of the good questions that have come in from the chat. For our audience who are following along, please continue to put questions into the chat as you hear things, and I will be sure to bring them in. I guess one of the first questions I have, if I can take the moderator's role, is Melody and Arsène, between the two of you, do you see any similarities between your research? Were there any findings that you thought after listening to each other that there seems to be some overlapping findings? I'd just be curious to hear your reactions to each other's work first. Melody or Arsène, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, there are some similarities, especially like, I think I mentioned something on the growth of the numbers. After 2010 is the number of high net worth individuals increased. We also recorded a higher number of philanthropic organizations, because you will find out that these high net worth individuals are the ones who are funding some of the philanthropic organizations.
Arsène, did you feel that there were any similarities between the regions?
Yes, there is similarities. What Melody just said, this is really important because the number of national, when we have citizens that have become rich, you can see also the development of philanthropic organizations. These organizations are really like an instrument for them to give out. So this is very important. And also there is another similarities, the origin of the funding. For example, in Zimbabwe, for example, she mentioned that most of the organization, most of the money come from outside compared to other countries. And this is true, for example, for Mali. So most of the money comes from abroad. And most of the foundations in Mali, they are more international foundation that has kind of national representations, you know, and also I think the distribution of the way the strategy to give out almost the same, almost the same strategies. But one of the difference that we have is that I think that the level of donations is higher if I compare with Francophone countries. And I wonder why. Maybe one of the reasons is the fact that in these 3 Francophone countries, in most of the Francophone countries from French tradition, there is no incentive for a fiscal incentive, for example, to donate, you know. So this may be a barrier. It may not encourage people to declare what they donate, because there is no there is no incentive. I think that if, for example, in Ghana, the neighboring country, there are incentives. You can get kind of tax deduction, things like that. It can help you to declare what you donate. So I think that she can have more, accurate data on the donation level than we cannot really have. People will declare, will say, but we know that most of the things remain informal. Yes. So I will stop here and thank you for a great presentation. So, Melody.
Arsène, if I could keep building on what you just said, one of the main findings you found was that there seems to be a culture of secrecy and non-transparency on the funds and what is being moved and what is not being moved. One question we had in the chat is, how big are the donations that are actually disclosed versus those that are secret? Do you have a feeling of where the line is between what is disclosed and what is not?
Yes, what is disclosed, they tend to disclose very big donations, because you need to explain where the money comes from. If you start building a school, people want to know, where did you get this money? So yeah, but if it's something that you can say that, oh no, if this is just, yes, I was able to get it, they will not disclose. And this is the problem. And I think that things in Gabon, for example, I could see that things are changing. Like also in Côte d'Ivoire, but not at the same space. The same pace. Yes, because most of the young people that are, for example, I can take in Côte d'Ivoire those who are the stars of football, for example, like Didier Drogba, like other people. When they donate, the young people, when they donate, they don't hesitate to say that, yes, they make a donation. It may be a kind of generational thing also. We did not, my research did not really explore this, but we could see that these young people, they can tweet, or even their, yes, they can tweet saying that, yes, they visit this institution, or they did this, and then they give this, So I think that we need further studies to see, to be able to gauge this issue.
Thank you. And then another question I found very intriguing in your conclusions was related to that there's a high degree money or funds being moved to more, maybe you would call developmental or charity-based things, but not necessarily deep social change to change the rules. Do you get a sense of what the drivers are that are? Why is that the case? Why is it that high wealth individuals in the region tend to move funds into that type of activities versus trying to look at the structures that are causing some of these things? Did that come up in any of your interviews or any of your findings?
Yes, I think it's related to the landscape and also to the law. First, to the legal framework, because philanthropy foundation, people put that in charity, and the concept of charity is just helping, to relieve, providing relief to people that are suffering. It is not transformative. It's like but when you want to do advocacy, for example, they will think that, oh, this is not charity. They think that, this may be like political or something like that. So transformative philanthropy is not very well seen. And third, this is related to the political situation also. In an authoritarian regime, if you have money, you really need to get along with the government. You can lose your money, or they can close your business. You can, so they don't want to do things that can challenge the government, to be in peace. And this is a huge problem. They want to be involved, to support something that will challenge the government, that will challenge the current rules, Just they want to be, the government have really all the powers. Because they know that this is not always the rule of law, they know that, the government have the power to do anything, and the justice will obey to what the government will say. In such situation, people are very careful, So these are the explanation that I can give.
Thank you. And just building on that, one final question for you is you had also mentioned that there was some differences between high wealth individuals within the countries and those in the diaspora who were providing support within the countries. Can you give us can you expand on that a little bit more? Can you give us a little more information about the dynamics between diaspora communities who are supporting versus those that are living in the countries themselves? Is it a big difference in numbers? Is it a big difference in what they're supporting or what they're able to support? And specifically related to your point about the politics of the situation and the laws, are there also differences in what those outside versus inside provide funds to?
Okay. Maybe the only difference could be, yes, we have some few differences. Yes, in terms of number, of course, those who are inside outnumber those who are outside, those who are known. Yes, but some of the big, in terms of quantity, maybe some of the people that are outside really have a lot of money. But one of the big difference in terms of giving out, the strategy of giving, I think that those from the diaspora tend to be more formal. They usually use firms or that help them set up foundations that almost operate like in Europe, which is more formal, So because they have advice, their foundations are more formal than those who are here, because they are not always present, in the country, so they need to structure, their instrument of giving. But those who are in the country, you can just go and see them and talk, can be more informal. And also, I think that those who are giving from outside really are yes, stars of football or musicians, other artists, you know, they are also young. I wonder if there is a generational difference. Because people, you know, young people, I mean, these people, they easily tweets or write in their Facebook saying that this, you know. But, you know, so I think that we need further studies to be able to come up with conclusion that are proved, that are more documented. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Melody, I'll move over to you. I had a couple questions for you as well. I was interested in one of your biggest conclusions, that you found that giving within the philanthropic space in Zambia mainly comes from Zambian individuals supporting Zambian philanthropic groups, versus outside with South Africa and Zimbabwe, it seems to be quite much more foreign funds coming in. Can you expand on that a little bit more and tell us more about that finding?
Okay, thank you. I think the trend that a large amount of funds is coming from within is in South Africa and Zambia. If you look at Zambia, they have a large number of community foundations. So community foundations, normally how they operate is that they are focused on a certain geographic area. And sometimes the members of that particular community, they are the ones who are pulling the resources together to fund certain operations and certain needs in their community. So I think that's why we saw that a large amount of funds are coming from within. The same goes for South Africa. South Africa, we see that their foundations, independent foundations, and also corporate foundations. The corporate foundations are from within South Africa. And I think also because on the independent foundations is, if we look at the high net worth individuals, you will see that there's actually a high number of high net worth individuals in South Africa than in Zimbabwe and Zambia. So I think that may be the reason why their funds are coming from within, unlike in Zimbabwe. Also, it is important to note that in Zimbabwe, there is no legislation that encourage giving. There are no incentives to encourage giving. So maybe that's the reason why we don't have a large number of funds coming from within the country.
Thank you for that. And I know in your research, you did look a little bit into what type of funds going out, grants, or whatever you like to call it, the different categories and the different types of things they're supporting. I'm just curious again with Zambia versus South Africa and Zim, do you get a sense that what type of activities are being supported are different in those contexts if they're internal funds versus external funds? Do you see a difference in the profile, a difference in the politics, a difference in those type of things? Is there any link between inside funds, outside funds, and what is actually supported?
Unfortunately, on this particular research, we did not look at that on like which funds are going for what activity. We just looked at all the activities. So we can't really tell whether they are external or internal funds funding a particular activity.
That makes sense. There's also a question in the chat about Zimbabwe and Zambia. Someone is wondering, what are some of the difficulties experienced in Zim and Zambia in measuring the philanthropic activities done by corporates through corporate social responsibility? Again, what are some of the difficulties experienced by Zim and Zambia in measuring the activities done through CSR? Do you have any insights there?
Yeah, I think if you look at the corporates in Zimbabwe, for example, there is no clear reporting in the corporates themselves on what they are doing. It can either be through CSR or through any philanthropic work. There's no clear reporting. Also, there's no legislation enforcing them to report. So they will just go and do whatever they do And when you look at their reports, there's another research where I was looking at what the corporates are doing. You will see that they will just report that, for example, this amount, we had this amount for corporate social responsibility. But what exactly was done? Was it for philanthropic work? Was it like for, it's not clear because there's no legislation that support that. I think the same goes for Zambia again, which is a bit different from South Africa, where corporates are actually encouraged to report on what they're doing.
Thank you for that. There's another question related to some of the formalities in South Africa. Did you get a sense, this is from the chat again, did you get a sense how long it takes to register for a philanthropic organization in South Africa? The speed of it, and how might that affect how these funds are being moved?
It actually takes less than a month to register in a philanthropic organization in South Africa. Of course, it will differ on what type of philanthropic organization you'd want to register. But from the data that we collected, there are some organizations which actually registered in less than a month.
Okay. And then in terms of registering, did you get a sense of what is the benefit for, I mean, you talked about some of the tax benefits in South Africa, for example, but what is the purpose of registering in all three of these countries versus being an informal entity?
All right, thank you for that. In all the countries, yes, there are some organizations which are operating informally. That's they are not registered. But the disadvantage is that in unregistered organization is not recognized at law. It's not recognized at law, and it limits whatever the activities it is doing, because it's not allowed to operating according to law. That organization cannot like apply for grants, cannot like apply for different activities, and therefore it limits even their growth if they're not registered.
And this is in all three of the countries?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Actually, we found out in all the three countries, we found out that for you to be allowed to operate at law, you need to be registered.
Okay, thank you. And then, I mean, in terms of what the findings from Francophone, the three Francophone countries, Arsène, you talked about how a majority of it seems to be going to more charity-based or developmental or emergency assistance versus deep social change and looking at the rules and what to keep people in poverty and struggling. Melody, can you talk a little bit about what you found in terms of the politics of funding in these three places? Did you get a sense that it was more charity-based or emergency funding relief, or did it have to do with more deeper systemic change issues?
I think I would say that it cuts across everything. It cuts across all philanthropic work. There's a bit of charity. There's a bit of I think we talked about rural uplifting. We talked about support of small enterprises. We talked about relief activities. We talked about knowledge generation. We talked about policy and civil society. We talked about arts and culture. We talked about entrepreneurship. So I think it cuts across everything, whether it's charity, whether it's relief, whether it's emergency, it cuts across everything.
Excellent. And then I do have one final question for you, Melody, I have on my list is you had also mentioned the differences in where the funds are coming from when you said it's either fundraising or donations or grants. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between those three? Because at first glance, they might have some overlapping features. I'm curious if you can help us understand what the difference of those categories were.
Between grants and?
When you mentioned when you were pointing the sources of income within the three countries, and you talked about some was sponsorship and donation, some was fundraising, some was grants. Can you help us understand a little bit about, because a lot of that I would imagine would overlap.
That's very true. I think you'll find that all of them, they overlap. But remember, these results are according to what was given by these organizations. And what they're referring, maybe, for example, a sponsorship, is that they go to source for funds specifically to sponsor a particular activity. Same applies to maybe donations. Donations will be for a particular activity. Again, same applies for grants, where maybe they can see a call for application for grants and they do apply. But when you look deep into it, it's really difficult, like to separate, for example, grants, sponsorship, whatever. It all cuts across everything.
Excellent. I have a question for the both of you then, more of your sort of feelings after the research is now done. Arsène and Melody, what was it that was most surprising to you from the research? What surprised you the most? What made you say, aha, I wasn't expecting that? Maybe Arsène, would you like to start?
I think for me, the first surprise was, yes, first of all, the way of giving the informality. I was not expecting that, because these people, high net worth individuals, most of them have already they have set up foundations, or they are leading businesses where things are really formal. You know, if you own a business, you know, yes, you need formal rules, accounting and everything, you know, to succeed. And I was surprised that for their philanthropic work, that it was less formalized. You know, so this was a little bit surprising to me. Even I think that I really need to have another paper to really analyze that, to understand more. How is it possible that they decided, because this is not normal, because these people are living in a very formalized world, even their companies, you know, everything is formalized. They get used to formalization, you know. Why? For that, they don't formalize. So, and also I was surprised also the last thing, that to see that philanthropy was not really transformative in our countries. And that this was related more to the political situation, because there are, if you see, Freedom House, there, all these regime are not really free. The authoritarian regime, you know, no. So I was expecting that this organization or these people should be able to transform. Now I understand why you do have a civil society organization, NGOs, and other people that usually go to the street that transform, you know, that can, but not these institutions that have the means, that could have invest in awareness raising, you know, but they don't do that because of the regime, you know. So this was surprising for me. Yeah, so I'll stop here.
Thank you for sharing that. Melly, what about yourself? What was it that you left with that surprised you the most? Something you were not expecting?
Okay, thank you for that. I think the most important thing that surprised me is how the communities are contributing to philanthropy. You know, like, yes, when we talk about Africans, we can't separate Africans in philanthropy. Africans, the whole of a life of an African is about philanthropy. But whenever we are talking about philanthropy in Africans, we are used to horizontal philanthropy, where I'm giving like my immediate family, those who are around me. That's the way we are used to philanthropy when you're talking about philanthropy in Africa, or African philanthropy. However, this is horizontal philanthropy, and the philanthropy that we are used in Africa is more of informal. It's not like recorded. But from this research, I found out that communities are actually contributing to formal philanthropy, where they are giving not only to their immediate family members, but also others. You know, when we are reading and when we're talking about developing countries, we view developing countries as those people like who cannot do anything for themselves, who are waiting for others to do it for them. But from this research, I can say that Africans, or local communities are actually doing a lot. It may not be recorded as much as vertical philanthropy is being done, but I found out that they're actually doing a lot, and really speaking, that surprised me. I think I'll end here.
Thank you for that. We have about a couple minutes more to kind of wrap everything up. If anyone has any extra final questions in the chat, feel free to add them to the chat. And if not, maybe we'll start thinking about how we round this up. I'm curious now, after the research is done, after you see more questions you might have, if you could both give us a bit of a concluding thought, and not least where you think this research should go. What is the next step? Where should the line of the hard work you've done already, where should it continue? Maybe Arsène, would you like to start? A concluding word and where you think this research should go.
Okay, so this was an exploratory study, based on literature review and some exploratory interviews, just to map the state of philanthropy. So after we done that, now I could see some very interesting topics that we need to deepen. It is no longer the mapping, but now I could see gaps that we want to deepen. For example, one of the gaps that I've already writing a paper on the legal framework, because this come a lot in most of the discussion. So this is one of the paper that I hope to get out in the coming month, and also yes, other paper on the politics of philanthropy in these countries. Yes, that I think that I really want to explore. So thank you very much, and thank you for the very interesting questions.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the hard work you did. And Melody, what about you? After you've done this, where do you see the research going from here? What are some concluding thoughts, and what are some lines that you would like to, or you'd like to encourage others to really follow up after this work in Zambia, Zim, and South Africa?
All right, thank you, Tyler. I think when I started, I actually mentioned that this particular research is part of a larger project that is being done by the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment, where we are seeking to understand the philanthropic organizations in all African countries. So that's the start, where we're starting with 3 countries. But our hope is that we may be able to cover all the African countries. We've already done literature review for most of the countries, and what's now left is a data collection and come up with the findings, so that maybe we can come up. If you look like, for example, at the 3 countries that I'm presenting, you notice that the local philanthropic organizations are still very small. And when we finish collecting the data from all the African countries, we'll then be able to sit down and come up with conclusive conclusions, where we want to try and find ways of encouraging growth in local philanthropic organizations. Remember, we are talking about localization of philanthropic organizations, where we are saying we are not. It's more impactful for local organizations to focus on the challenges, the local challenges. They understand the challenges of their localities better than those organizations who are coming from other continents. So when we have gathered all this data, we may be able now to find ways of encouraging growth in these local organizations. And I would say thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you so much, our attendees. This was quite interesting.
Thank you, Melody, and thank you, Arsène. This is, as a moderator's privilege, this has been a treat to both pick your brains a little and hear about the surprising things and the exciting things and the challenging things as we talk about these big issues. So I'd like to thank both of you for your work. I'd like to thank the tech team and the admin team behind the scenes here. Both of Melody and Arsène's reports are out on the website, and hopefully we'll get some slides out there as well. And otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we wish you a safe and happy day ahead. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye now.